anybody wants any Hershey Kisses, probably. Guess anybody wants any Hershey Kisses? You're welcome.
Oh my goodness.
I like it. It looks nice. No, it's comfy. It's comfy.
Good morning. There we go. That was a late response. I guess that was from Mary Lou. Good morning. Because you were late to respond to my good morning. Took you a little bit of delay. Oh, she was saying it first? She was talking, then she had to get it out. She had other things on her mind. There's some truth that matter. Y'all couldn't hear what Mary Lou said, did you? If she wasn't talking, there would be something wrong with her. If you ever feel like you are not smart enough or lack education, all you need to do is drive the bus some and pick up Mary Lou and some of these other really smart women, and you will learn a lot. All right, this morning on a very serious note, we're concerned obviously with Larry Ray, and he continues to be sick. We were talking, Jackie Myers is, it appears, if nothing changed this morning, as of even yesterday morning when some of us were talking that gathered together, he is doing poorly and seems to be about at the end of his life. And then certainly we're saddened for Tim and Liz on the death of a granddaughter. Laura miscarried, and I do not know how far along she was, but miscarriage there, so we're sorry about that. So we're going to start with the word of prayer. Are there any others that you specifically won't mention? Okay, bow with me. Our Father in heaven, we do come before you this morning. We are thankful for this opportunity to be here. At this time, we are mindful of those associated with the church here at Northside that are suffering. Specifically, we asked you to be with one of our deacons, be with Larry Ray. We're hopeful and mindful that things might go well with him. We'd ask that you bless the doctors and nurses that are caring for him. Be with Shirley as she gives him support. We ask, dear God, that you be with Jackie Myers here at the end of his life, that the suffering will be limited, and help him as he goes to his reward in heaven. Our hearts are saddened for Tim and Liz upon the death of their granddaughter, and we hope and pray that things will be done to comfort them. We're hopeful that Laura and her husband can do as well as possible in this time. Father, we are thankful. We're mindful of so many blessings we have living in this country. Help us not to be negligent, not to forget about those things, and along with that, the awesome responsibility we have to give back and help others and to spread the gospel. Continue to be with this church here at Northside. We are so thankful for the love that abounds here. We're thankful for those that have given their time to guide us to heaven. Be with our two ministers. Help them, Father. Please forgive us when we sin and guide us always. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, we are in our journey of the Old Testament. If you will turn, please, to the book of Judges. Book of Judges. All right, so we have rapidly proceeded along in our journey. Do you remember last week I was asking you, I don't know if you did it, to kind of put your mind and try to be like what Moses was going through there as he was on the land or the plains of Moab. And there he had for 40 years had to suffer consequences of deeds that others had done. You remember us talking about that? And if you really want to understand even how Moses could strike a rock and take credit for something at a point, how do we get sometimes frustrated? You got children, even with the grandchildren that we love so much, and they just push you to the point sometimes that your nerves are frayed and you're about to do what? You'd like to wring their necks. So we understand with Moses, but as much as we understand with that, there was still consequences of what he did, wasn't it? So that's one of those things that's always hard for me when I look at Moses, and 40 years he persevered and put up with this nonsense, because that's what it was. And he didn't get to enjoy the land. He should have been able to march right into the land of Canaan and enjoy the fruits, and he didn't get to, and yet he made a mistake, and he was held accountable. So you and I need to recognize that. And then we talked about what had to be a great man, Joshua, to come along, be able to come along in the footsteps of Moses. That says a lot for him, that he was able to carry on. And so when we ended Joshua, the book of Joshua last week, do you remember? We had to go through Joshua, the book, rapidly. But we see his death. Does anybody remember about what age he was and how I tried to relate things to Moses a little bit? All right. Ms. Smoot said he was 110 years old. And what I tried to get along, it wasn't exactly, but Moses began that journey with the Israelites at the age of 80. Well, Joshua just slightly older. Our understanding is he was about 85, but in that general time frame, he led the Israelites. Joshua did for about 25 years versus Moses 40, but there's some concepts there that are same. Okay, so here's what I would like for you to try to think back with today as we begin. So you're going to start the book of Judges, okay? The book of Judges. First thing I want you to understand is the amount of time that we're going to cover in the book of Judges, okay? So let's try to relate to it in things you and I can. What is going to be celebrated in this country in the year 2026? Do you know, concerning the history of the United States? I think you said it. What'd you say, Jackie? 250 years, okay? To me, Jackie, that just seems like, wow, that is a long time. I happen to be alive at the bicentennial. Okay, probably none of y'all were, but I was alive time of the bicentennial. It was pretty neat, wasn't it? And to try to reflect on that this country had been already for 200 years, and now I've seen another 50, it just seems like, wow, what a long period. Well, for me to try to grasp the period of the Judges, depending on how you look at Judges and the next books, 1st and 2nd Samuel, probably closing in on 350 years if you combine Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, okay? Wow, what a lot of time. I've forgotten the exact number. I meant to look this up. So what presidential number are we at now? Mr. Trump is 40, is it 7 or 8? Ago? 47. Okay, I can't remember. I know he touts the number, but I can't remember. So he's 45 and 47. But we've gone through these various presidents, which translate to about 40-ish different men. I can't remember the exact figure, right? In this 250 years. Would you agree with me? At least recorded in the book of Judges, and combining 1st and 2nd Samuel, in rough figure, there's about 15 judges recorded. Okay? So, the next question I'd have for you, did they rule the land like, in a sense, our presidents today do? Is it the same? Do you know? Okay? Are they like Tim Stark will sit over here probably during the Sunday morning worship, and if Chris responded to him and said, hey, Tim, you remind me of those in the book of Judges. Is that really accurate? No. So what would be the purpose? What was the concept behind the judges? Do anybody want to speculate? Do you know why the judges came about? What was their purpose? What now? Well, okay, yes, it definitely dealt with ruling, but I'm trying to get you to think. Okay, so let's say it another way. When we left Joshua in the land of Canaan, he took, we say 7 years or so really to kind of conquer the land. But remember, when they conquered the land, what was still in the land? There were still some other groups. And even over the next few years, the concept was supposed to be when a tribe went into an area and he got them, he got a foothold, or at least a toehold in an area, they were supposed to go ahead themselves and do what? Root, hog, or die. They were supposed to be like a bunch of pigs rooting out. Really, that's what they were supposed to do. Well, do you think they did that? Okay, so here's what we're going to set ourselves up for. So go with me to the first chapter of Judges. Now, some of this is repetition, because if you looked at the last chapter of Joshua, we saw Joshua die. Look with me now, chapter 1 of Judges, please. If you're having a hard time following this, if you'll stay with me, it'll go a lot smoother. Chapter 1, verse 1. Now, after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first to fight against them? Okay? So we have recorded the death of Joshua. And because Joshua's not there, they're kind of floundering around in a sense. I would say that if they had really thought on it, they had their person to go to, and that is the Lord to just ask. I mean, my goodness. The way they question this almost makes me still know that they did not have the faith that they needed. That started when they came out of the land of Egypt with their forefathers, continue to this day. And so if you read through, there's some little conquests, but here's where you see, so chapter 1 says the death of Joshua, but look again at chapter 2. And I put a star beside verse 2 of chapter 2. Would you consider doing that in your Bible? And you shall make no league, no agreements, if you will, with the inhabitants of this land. You shall throw down their altars. And then what's it say after that? The word but, and then what? You've not obeyed. Do you remember, I tried to point this out, that in the book of Numbers, Moses giving his discourses, Moses talking to the people, and the ultimate thing he was trying to get across to them was, you need to trust and obey the Lord, and all will go well. And the Lord told them to get rid of the inhabitants of the land. And as harsh as this may seem, you can say what you want to, in this country today, the struggles we're having specifically, and as Islam is taking root, for example, man, the problems we have. And so the Lord wanted the evil out of the land. And chapter 2, verse 2, they've been in the land now, let's just say some parts of it they've been in for 25 years. Some parts of the land, the early conquest, been in for 25 years. And what's still existing? The evil. They didn't get it away from them. If we're trying to apply this today, there is a balance. Come on, guys. There's a balance. We cannot convert the world if at times we're not in touch with those who are doing wrong and evil. But when we let it in our lives, if you will, infiltrate, coexist, become a part of our lives, it affects us. And probably all of us, the biggest thing we have that's infiltrating us would be the television. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves. Tracy and I struggle now. For a while, we could watch the Hallmark Channel, and it's gotten pretty rough. And so now we were with Great American Family. We watch it a lot because so far, no cursing, nothing bad. I'm not saying that they believe everything I do, but whatever you want to say about, Cameron Bure, however you say her name, she's doing so far a good job, at least the same things are presentable. So what I'm saying is, if I've grown up in the church and it's easy for evil, bad thoughts to infiltrate my life, and I've been around it all my life, what about somebody that's even marginally trying to do good? Man, I tell you, I'll get ideas. They'll advertise something's going to be good, and I thought, years ago, they came up with something called Game of Thrones. I thought, man, I kind of liked some of the Lord of the Rings, watching them McCall and stuff, and I thought, man, I watched a trailer or two of that, and I thought, well, that won't work. Terrible. Just terrible what's happening. Well, they came up with that thing that looked like it was going to be neat from the state of Texas, Landman or whatever you call it. If you're watching that, you are putting evil in your lives. That's about as terrible as you can get. No way I'm watching. I try to watch some sports, but it's getting where now they focus in on what the guys are saying, the curse words. I don't know if I can keep watching that, right? So the Lord knew that you need to obey Him, and He wanted the evil out of their lives. They did not need to be in contact with it. And there's a lesson for you and I. And again, in the New Testament, we're told not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, but yet we're also told to go out and spread the gospel. So where is that balance? I would suggest to you that when it comes into our houses and stays in there, we got problems. It's difficult. Why is the Old Testament here for our reading? So we can see with the children of Israel the mistakes they made. I'm going to pose this to you because we're hard on the Israelites, and I've said this in other ways, but I thought of another way this week to say it. So I'm going to ask for classroom participation, even with the elder up in the, I believe it's Chris up there, isn't it? I'm going to ask you to listen to this statement. If you consider yourselves to be a law-abiding citizen of the United States, now I'm going to know if you're asleep or not, or either you're a bad person. If you consider yourself to be a law-abiding citizen of the United States, I want you to raise your hand right now. If you consider yourselves to be a law-abiding citizen, if you're doing right, okay. Now, you can put them down. You don't have to answer this next one. So we feel so good about ourselves right now. Who here has broke the law of speeding? Okay? Oh, no, you didn't have to put your hands up. I was going to say, from here on out, because these questions may get harder, you don't have to put your hands up anymore, okay? Who here has ever evaded paying their taxes? Now, don't do it. I'm trying to look. I don't want to see. Really? Who has figured out a way not to pay sales tax? Come on. Who has failed to report every bit of the income they ever made? So, here's my point I'm trying to get across. You and I would consider ourselves law-abiding citizens, and yet if we're forthright with ourselves, we sometimes aren't so good. So before we dog the Israelites, I'm asking you to look at them and recognize that we do bad, and we need to learn from them so that we can try not to do bad in the future, okay? So as we go through these next books, it's over and over how bad the Israelites are. But sometimes you and I are no different. And so I need to make application to my life. And so have I obeyed the voice of the Lord? Have I done what we are told in the New Testament? See, sometimes we'll say we're law-abiding citizens, and we look over these things we consider petty. And that is why we have denominational problems in this world today. Because man will say, well, I'm a godly person. But yet if you really look at it, are they following God's word? Are they really a godly, abiding citizen? And I would say the answer is no. All right, so continuing in chapter 2, we have verse 6. And when Joshua had let the people go, the children of Israel went every man unto his inheritance to possess the land. And I pinned in years ago or something. No, I don't know when I did this. Gain control. Okay? Maybe I did that this week. That's bad. Can't remember when I wrote that in. To gain control of the land. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great works of the Lord that he did for Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died being 110 years old. So this is kind of a recap of what we already knew. And look at verse 10. And also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, And there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. So the implication here, I think the wording is, during the time of Joshua, you had a generation that had learned from having to wander in the wilderness, and at least generally speaking, they did what? Followed after the Lord. But when those died, things changed. I would tell you that right now we're already beginning having issues worldwide because the generation that fought specifically in World War II is down to, I don't know if there's anybody left. This past year, didn't the last World War II veteran pass away? I think that's right. I mean, come on. Y'all are younger. I can relate a little bit to World War II, but it's very difficult for you to relate to World War II, isn't it? And so, you know what that likens? That increases the chance of your generation allowing a World War III to happen. Okay? I can tell you that when I grew up, man, World War II had been so bad. Come on, think about your parents' stuff. Didn't they want to avoid another world war? Yes. And we knew it was so bad and how bad it could have been. I mean, we went through drills. Even when I came along up through, I believe it was middle school, we were going through drills of what to do if there was a bomb. So you forget. It's easy to forget. And we're forgetting in this country. And we're forgetting about God, unfortunately. And sometimes it takes being humbled to remember God. And that's exactly what happens in the Judges. So if you want to kind of get the gist of what the Judges were about, so after Joshua, and no one in particular was designated just to replace him. I really, in my heart, believe the Lord was giving them a chance to just follow him. And if they had done what they were supposed to do and rid the land of the inhabitants, probably would have been no need for the judges. But man, woman, we don't always follow, don't do the will of the Lord, and so bad things happen. So if you followed the book of Judges and the roughly 15 individuals that are in here, what would happen? The Israelite as a whole would follow God for a while, relatively speaking. They would do so bad, we would call it apostasy, turning away, that just as the Lord said, sometimes he sent them, sometimes he just simply allowed to happen what he knew was going to. Those that they had left and those surrounding them would come in and oppress them. Oppress God's chosen people. And they would finally do kind of like they did in the land of Egypt, their forefathers, and they would do what? They would cry out to the Lord. You got that? And he would allow a deliverer to come along. Now, what's a little confusing, when we get down to the last two, Eli and Samuel, especially Samuel, he made a circuit. He would go around the entire, so to speak, top to bottom, if you will. He would try to cover the entire land of Canaan. Did you understand with the judges that sometimes one of these that were allowed to, or the Lord wanted to be brought up, risen, would sometimes only be for maybe a tribe or two or three? Wasn't necessarily the whole country of Israel. So the ones that study this better than me say there are 7 cycles of turning away from the Lord and coming back. I would argue with you if somebody says that during the good times, everybody in all of Egypt, all of the Israelites were doing right. I think you're wrong. There were pockets of good and pockets of bad all during that time. All right, look at chapter 3, verse 1. Now these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan. So if you understand and read this, the Lord did allow, once the Israelite nation was not going to follow him, he allowed these to remain and to be a thorn in the flesh, to try to prod these people to come back. I just wonder, you and I are looking at a group of Christians, but I wonder how many of us would actually be Christians if there weren't some bad things, some evil things in our life to turn us back towards God. As hard as it hurts when we lose a loved one, as hard as it is and difficult as life can be, oftentimes when we turn back to God the most is when? After we have been through trials and tribulations. And so, again, I think that follows a path with us. Haven't you, most of us live long enough here, haven't you in your Christian walk had ups and downs? Sometimes I consider myself, sometimes I think I have bipolar characteristics in my life, and I think I have bipolar characteristics in the work of the Lord. I get all excited, I'm gung-ho, and then, come on, I'll have a teacher come up and say, well, I got to quit teaching. I can't do it anymore. I'm exhausted. You go, come on, you drop down. What would the Lord like for us to do? Just keep chugging along. If I give Moses credit for anything else, I think it's just the fact that he kept wandering in the wilderness like he was supposed to. Okay? Chapter 4 is an interesting one, and I don't know how to completely handle it, because who is the one who's elevated to a judge in chapter 4 that's different from the other ones? What's different? Deborah. What makes her different? I just said it. We actually know, we can say the gender. We're smart enough here. Everybody I'm looking around here evidently is smart enough. We can say it was a she, not a they, them, whatever. It's the dumbest thing. It's one of that truly, to me, I look at things. They can public get this out and somebody can be mad at me. I'm sorry. Not being able to recognize a she and a he is blowing my mind. I can't, that just boggles my mind. Now, as a he or she, I can choose to do some things that aren't as masculine as I should be, or you as feminine, but that still doesn't change the fact that you're a man or a woman. So anyway, what I don't know how to do here is, how do we balance out, here is a woman that was in charge, and we are in the New Testament where we know there are limitations? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I do know in the New Testament that when no man was present to do the job, women sure took care of it. I do know in the New Testament that for an elder to be an elder, it is said that he needs to be the husband of one wife, which means he has needed to be prodded, pushed, advised, guided, with a good woman by his side. So I don't know all about it. I know Deborah did well. I know the Bible does not hesitate to put her, a woman that was responsible for being the one helping the Israelites out of their misery. About all I know to say on that one. It does say at the end of chapter 5, and the land had rest for 40 years. So the period of time, remember I already said, these are a lot less judges, or at least we have recorded. Maybe there were more and we don't know it. But it does look like the judges at this time could handle it for a lot longer period of time than most of our leaders can here righteously. We have people that try in this country. We're having that problem right now, I think, in the Senate. Representatives, we have people that think they can lead and govern for 20, 30, 40 years and not become corrupted. Doesn't look like that can happen, does it? The problem. All right, chapter 6, Midian oppresses, and we have one of the neatest things there. If you're in chapter 6, who is the man that is called? Starts with the letter G. I'm not going to say it. I'll make sure somebody's with me. Chapter 6, who is the judge? Gideon. And Gideon, much like Moses, is a little bit meek and doesn't think he can do the job. And they'd been oppressed by the Midianites long enough that in chapter 6 we see, man, he just didn't know if he could do it. He wanted to make sure truly the Lord was on his side before he took this on. So we see him at the threshing floor, or the wine press in verse 11. He threshed wheat by the wine press. And then chapter 6, verse 27. Look there with me. This is one of the first things we see showing some might. Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had said unto him. And what did he do? Verse 28 reminds us, the Baal, the idol, was cast down. Did that cause grief in the town? Were they upset? Said, bring out your son that he may die. And that is not what took place. Okay? We see that the Lord began to be evident that he was on Gideon's side. But Gideon wants more signs. Okay, so if we get to verse 36, Gideon does this about, is it something wet, dealing with the dew and not wet? Okay, we don't have time to look into that, but that's what that's about. What I really like about Gideon and his story is chapter 7. You remember, he was going to go up against the host of the Midianites, and he had gathered to him thousands of Israelites. But the Lord wanted to prove that he was the one doing it. So do you remember how he took that about? Do you remember how Gideon's men got whittled down? Just to check your memory? Huh? Down to 300. And do you remember how that process came about? About how you drink, how water was drink, right? How they got the brook or the stream, whatever, and depending on how they were to drink water, got all the way down to 300. Not only did he reduce it to 300, did they go in there with bombs and things to get rid of the Midianites? No. The women, this is where they would be better because the jars and how they were going to do and the noise and the beating it, right? And the Lord actually made the other side be scared so much that they killed their own fellow Midianites, right? And I think that's interesting that it reminds me in some ways of like Jericho, an unconventional way to prove the Lord is on his side. And it reminded me of the coming out of Egypt. You know, that was an unconventional way. I don't think anybody else had come out of a bondage by having 10 plagues. Do you know of that? You know, we just took a leader down in someplace else. We didn't go in and take somebody and say, hey, you're going to have a plague of locusts, try to get your attention. Did we? How do you say his name starts with M? Not Mandami. He's about as bad, but he's in New York City. What is the guy's name starts with M? I can't. Maduro, how you say it? In Venezuela. You know, they didn't go in there no, they went in there with firepower. I love it with the Gideon, how Gideon did is, and he believed in the Lord. So I'm just asking you, put yourself in Gideon's place. Come on. We brag on him. We really should. Daniel, if you were in Gideon's place and you were told you're going to take only 300 men, and not only that, you're not going to have them armed with swords at all places. That might, yeah. But I'll tell you one thing, to do that, did you have to have trust in the Lord? Absolutely. So what is it today with us? Have you ever thought about this? In some ways, we're much like Gideon. What are our numbers compared to the enemy? What are our numbers compared to the enemy? In this country, we call ourselves a Christian nation. But if you looked at the ones that are actually in even any kind of religious body this morning and compared to those that are not, we're much like Gideon. And we're armed with the Bible. Putting a lot of trust in the Lord, aren't we? Don't downplay sometimes what you're doing. I think we ought to at least recognize that we are putting a lot of faith in the Lord, aren't we? I think that's something that we need to be or feel good about ourselves, that we have got a lot of faith in the Lord. Now, I do not know at what point we're to pick up arms. And so what's that story people say about, you know, the two men running from the bear? You've all heard that, surely. Maybe young people hadn't. You know, two men running from the bear. And the one is going to stop and pray, right? And the other says, no, I'm going to run and pray. And so I do not know at what point you and I are supposed to bear arms and do things more than just talking about it. But I am convinced in our lives a lot of times we are expected just to trust and obey the Lord and have confidence in Him. I have absolute confidence that a heaven exists. Now, what I'm not absolutely confident in is Jason is going to be smart enough to remain faithful throughout my life so I get to be in heaven. I'm confident there's going to be a day of judgment. I have no doubt about that. Can I trust like Gideon? I believe a lot of times in our lives we are. But then I believe you and I go through periods of times where that trust wanes and we try to take things into our own hands, kind of like we're going to see Saul later on when he doesn't obey the Lord. Okay? Any thoughts? Anything? Am I saying anything incorrectly? Okay. We get in these little details. It's easy for me to say the wrong name, so you help me out now. Verse 16 did say of chapter 7, they took the empty pitchers and lamps within the pitchers. You know, the water containers. That's a hard word. All right. It is neat, Gideon's victory, when you come down to chapter 8, verse 10, it does says, about 15,000 men, all that were left of all the hosts of the children of the east, for there fell 120,000 men that drew sword. And what's crazy, a huge portion of those were actually ones that just killed themselves. Let's go down to chapter 9. This is where there's a little bit of controversy, but most theologians do not consider Abimelech one of the judges. This story in here about him becoming king. I'm not going to argue with you over that. Keep working through your Bible. There's a neat little, if we had time, chapter 10 about the man that had the 30 sons and they rode the 30 colts to the 30 cities. That's kind of neat. And Israel gets humiliated again, it says in that chapter. All right, so let's go to chapter 13. You recognize we're going to do this rapidly. Chapter 13, who do we see the birth of? Chapter 13. What great man, or physically great man? Samson. And we always say Samson and, there's even a song about it, Samson and Delilah. So let's just harp on this for just a minute. So Samson, his birth is one that the Lord was involved with. And his mother was told, don't take that, you take that Nazarene vow, how are you going to say it? You know, he will not have his hair cut, right? And we see that his dilemma is going to be women, because I believe it begins chapter 14. Yeah, look at chapter 14. And Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, what did the Lord already say? You know, if you marry in, you have talking to a man of Israel and he had relations, found somebody of different belief, there's going to be problems. Okay, things are going to occur. It's not going to go well. And even Samson, being somebody who's considered a judge, somebody to help against the Philistines, still had a physical problem. Now, when you read this, we know that the Lord was involved ultimately, so I'm not going to get too in-depth in that, but I'm just telling you, issues occur if you're not careful when you have dissimilar beliefs. All right, look at verse 4. I put a star by it. But his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord that he sought an occasion against the Philistines. So there's my point. They're disappointed. You know, they don't like Samson going down amongst others, a different group. But this was a case where the Lord was going to allow this ultimately to serve his purpose. This is one of these we struggle with, don't we? I'm telling you right now, me personally, I struggle with our president that I've told you before I voted for, because on the one hand, we have people say that they act like he was God's sin. I've said this before, almost like he's a God's sin, that he's God's chosen. I choose to think that this is a case where God even uses some men that are bad to do some good work. Now, that's the way I'm going to look at it. You can disagree with me, but I think right now he's doing some things that help us as Christians, but I sure don't consider him to be a godly man. If you do, you and I need to talk. And I want to make sure I temper my vote for Donald Trump with the fact that he is not a godly man, guys. So please don't elevate him to that point. I think you're making a mistake. And here, this is an idea where the Lord allowed somebody to what I believe not to be doing the correct thing, but ultimately it was working for the good. So what happened is he goes down and he finds this woman, and basically if you follow up with Samson, he really is going to give the Philistines grief. And on this first story, they had that riddle, right? The riddle about where the honey came from. And they cheated because they got to his wife and kept bugging her and pestering her for the answer. And how did he end up getting even when he had to give them the 30 coats, the 30 garments? He went out and he slew 30 of their own and brought those garments in, right? That's how Samson took care of that. Well, it's an interesting verse. You can look at it. I think it's worth reading. It's an interesting comparison. In the New Testament, we have Christ using parables, things you can relate to. Right. Is anybody with me? In the New Testament, we agree, we have parables. We have thoughts, earthly thoughts to help us understand something more in depth. Okay, look at this simple thought. Chapter 14, verse 18. After they answer the riddle, because here's what it says. The men of the city said unto him on the seventh day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? And then Samson responds, if you had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. Okay? Basically, they were somewhere they shouldn't have been, and talking with his wife, getting information from her. That's what he relates to. And people at this time could understand that, even maybe better than we, because we're not farming communities and don't have the things that deal with it. But I put a little star by that. I thought that's pretty interesting. Almost a parable, the way that's stated, that verse. All right, so Samson's denied his wife. He goes through and remember how he uses fox, vixen, and he ties their tails together with a torch and he ruins all their crops. And Philistines are mad, and they're even getting on Samson's family, and all these things going. It's kind of interesting in chapter 15, verse 20. It goes ahead and tells, and he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years, but then we follow up with chapter 16 where it really gets interesting with his Samson and Delilah. So his wife, she's dead, and he finds this other woman, chapter 16, verse 4. And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up unto her and said unto her, Entice him, and see wherein is his great strength. Where does it lie? That we may prevail, that we may beat him and bind him. And so we have this discourse of multiple times of where Delilah asked Samson, how do you get your strength? You remember that? And he would talk about different ways you could bind him with new cords and things. Finally, she kept on and on. Again, nagging, kind of like the children of Israel did to Moses, till you do something wrong. And he finally gave her the truth that if you cut my hair, right? And so his hair was cut. His eyes were plucked out because he was not strong, and he was in prison. But over time, what happened to his hair? Make sure we're on the same page. Grew back out. Strength is returning, and he has one final wish, or that he asks of the Lord, and the Lord grants, and that is that he could take them with him. And we kind of picture him in a temple-like, with the big pillars. That's the way we picture it. If you're a child and you see theirs, what do you see? That's what you see, and you see him grabbing hold of them, and with his great strength, when you topple that, and was it 1,000 people? I always forget. I think it's 1,000 people, Philistines, died in that last thing of him. Okay? And he was blind at the time, and he still did it. He asked that he be able to rest and put against it. All right. What do we learn from that? Well, I think it learns that you can be as strong as you are, but if you allow your weakness to take hold, and his weakness seemed to be with women, we do know again that the Lord was involved in this. So I want to watch how far I take this, but even the strong better be recognizing our weakness, hadn't we? It also means, though, if we return to the Lord and do the Lord's will, ultimately, that we expect Samson to be in heaven. I do. All right. Chapter 19 has some interesting things about the Levite and a concubine that I'm not going to get into. Am I skipping over anything? Because we've got to do this quickly that y'all want discussed. All right, go to Judges chapter 21, the last verse. Turn with me, please. Chapter 21, the last verse. In those days there was no king in Israel, and what's the important part that says after that? The King James says, every man did what? What was right in his own eyes? Is that not really, if you say what's the root of the evil in the United States, well, really it's because we're not following God. But again, if you're not following God, what are you doing? You're doing what is right in your own sight. And we are being told as a country that is okay. I mean, we're being okay. And again, it just blows my mind that we're saying that a person can say or do whatever they want and we're supposed to be okay with it. It's crazy. All right, I'm going to use Allison here. Allison, are you called a doctor of radiology? I don't even know what that's called with your doctor, what your degree is. Just a general doctor. Okay. Specializing in radiology? Okay. Allison, this week I'm going to come and I'm going to apply for your job because I think I'm a doctor and I think I know radiology. Yes. How well will that go over? I can try it. But isn't that foolish? But that's just as foolish as what's going on in these United States, because every man is doing what he is thinking. We're not recognizing authority. We're not recognizing those that are above us. We're not recognizing those that know more than us. I would be a fool to try to do what you do at my point, at where I am right now. Now, I'm not saying I couldn't finally learn it, but right now I couldn't do it. One of the reasons would be because you'd be stupid to want to have to do it, okay? No, that's exactly right. Sure. That's right. some talent or ability. And the problem comes along, we try to get out, Chris Williams says, we try to get out of our lane. You know what you're good at, do it, and recognize that's who you are. And we're having a problem in this country. We do not recognize who we are. And we just say, if we say something, it's got to be right. You know, I can say I'm a doctor right now. That does not change the fact that I am not one, does it? Man, I wanted to get through Ruth. We got 30 seconds. Ruth. Let me just go ahead and give you a hint, because we're going to do it real quick next week. Ruth is a part of the time of the judges. Ruth is a part of the time of the judges. What I want you to be thinking on, how does her descendant David come about when we're talking about a woman that's a Moabitess? I want you to ponder on that. Ruth is a Moabitess. And yet through her, we get not only David, but who's out of that lineage? Ultimately, that we all benefited from. Christ. Right? That lineage. So dwell on that as we get ready for next week. We're going to go through Ruth, and we will get through 1 and 2 Samuel next week, some way or the other, okay? All right. Thank you all.